I'm Haley Mitchell, 28, and my parents have been my rock through every life crisis. That's why the text message I received 3 weeks before Thanksgiving felt like a punch to the gut. Honey, your dad and I think it's best if you skip Thanksgiving this year. We just need some space. No explanation. No follow-up. Just 12 words that shattered our most treasured family tradition. As hurt flooded through me, I had no idea that this rejection would uncover something my parents never intended to hide. Before I dive into what happened next, where are you watching from today? Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. I read every single one while sipping my morning coffee. Growing up in a tight-knit family, I never imagined a holiday without my parents. Even after moving to Boston 5 years ago for my dream job as a graphic designer at Horizon Marketing, I'd maintained our traditions religiously. My sleek downtown apartment with its minimalist decor and city views was the perfect representation of my independent life, but my heart always remained connected to my childhood home in Connecticut, especially during the holidays. My parents, Susan and Thomas Mitchell, had created a Thanksgiving ritual that felt sacred. Mom would wake up at dawn to prepare her famous sage and apple stuffing while Dad handled the turkey, a 20-pound behemoth he'd spend days brining and seasoning. The dining table would groan under the weight of casseroles, 3 different kinds of potatoes, homemade cranberry sauce, never the canned stuff, and at least 4 pies. The food was magnificent, but it was the warmth of being together that made these gatherings special. For the past decade, Thanksgiving at the Mitchell household had been non-negotiable. Even when I was in college and overwhelmed with final projects, I'd make the 3-hour drive home. Even when I had that terrible flu 2 years ago, I'd shown up with a box of tissues and surgical mask, refusing to miss our family tradition. My brother Kyle had been equally devoted until last year when he moved to California with his wife Amber and their twin 4-year-olds. His absence had left a noticeable void at the table, but we'd adapted, setting up a video call during dinner so the kids could show us their turkey drawings, and Kyle could still participate in Dad's annual gratitude toast. That's why the text message 3 weeks before Thanksgiving had felt so jarring. I was sitting at my desk, finishing a client presentation, when my phone buzzed. Seeing my mom's name, I'd smiled, expecting our usual check-in about Thanksgiving planning. Instead, I read words that made no sense to me. Honey, your dad and I think it's best if you skip Thanksgiving this year. We just need some space. We love you, but we need to do things differently this time. We can catch up during Christmas instead. I read the message 3 times, convinced I was misunderstanding something. My parents had never in my entire life asked for space from me. We weren't the type of family that needed breaks from each other. If anything, they usually complained that I didn't visit enough. My first instinct was to call immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried my dad's phone with the same result. A knot of anxiety began forming in my stomach as I typed and deleted multiple responses, finally settling on, "Is everything okay? This doesn't sound like you guys. Can we talk about this?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again before a reply came through. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just need some quiet time this year. We'll explain later." That later felt ominous. In my family, we didn't postpone difficult conversations. We didn't shut each other out. Something was very wrong. And the vagueness of their explanation only heightened my concern. I abandoned my presentation and spent the rest of the afternoon distracted, checking my phone every few minutes, waiting for more information that didn't come. By evening, the initial shock had transformed into a persistent worry that made it impossible to focus on anything else. I tried calling again before bed. This time my dad answered, his voice sounding strained. "Hey kiddo. Dad, what's going on? Mom's text about Thanksgiving doesn't make any sense." Pause. Then, "Your mom's just feeling a bit overwhelmed this year. We thought a quieter holiday might be good for us." Since when does Mom get overwhelmed by Thanksgiving? She lives for this stuff. Another pause. "People change, Haley. Sometimes we need different things as we get older." The explanation felt hollow, rehearsed even. My dad, who'd always been straightforward to a fault, was clearly hiding something. "Can I talk to Mom? She's already in bed. Not feeling great today." That detail made my anxiety spike. "Not feeling great how? Is she sick?" "Just tired, honey. Nothing to worry about. But the way he rushed to reassure me only confirmed that there was, indeed, plenty to worry about. By the time I hung up, my concern had deepened. The parents who had always welcomed me home, who had created our family traditions with such devotion, were suddenly establishing boundaries that felt completely out of character. As I lay in bed that night, staring at my ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic, and I had no idea why. 2 days passed before I managed to reach my mother directly. When she finally answered my call, her usually warm voice sounded distant, almost formal. "Hi, sweetheart. Sorry I missed your calls. It's been a busy week." The background noise told me she was in the kitchen, probably preparing dinner. The normalcy of that sound contrasted sharply with the abnormality of our situation. "Mom, what's going on? Why don't you want me to come for Thanksgiving?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but hurt seeped through. "It's not that we don't want you, Haley," she sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to carry more weight than simple exhaustion. "Your father and I just need some time to ourselves this year. We've been feeling overwhelmed." Overwhelmed by what? By me visiting once a year for a holiday we've celebrated together my entire life. "Don't be dramatic, honey. It's not about you." "Then what is it about? 'Cause this isn't like you guys at all." A pause, then the sound of water running. "Sometimes parents need space too, Haley. We've given so much of ourselves to you kids for so many years. Is it really so terrible that we want one holiday to ourselves?" The word stung. Throughout my childhood and early adulthood, my parents had never once suggested that their parental duties were burdensome. They'd shown up for every soccer game, every art show, every moment of significance. They'd been my biggest supporters when I decided to move to Boston, helping me furnish my apartment and checking in regularly without being overbearing. This sudden need for space felt like a rejection of our entire relationship. "Can you at least tell me if something's wrong? Are you and Dad having problems? For goodness sake, Haley. Not everything is a crisis." Her voice sharpened. "We're fine. We just want a quiet Thanksgiving. I don't understand why this is so difficult for you to accept." Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background, followed by my mother saying, "Tom wants to say hello." My father came on the line, his usual cheerful greeting absent. "Hey kiddo. Your mom tells me you're upset about Thanksgiving." "I'm not upset, Dad. I'm confused and worried. This isn't like you guys. I know it seems odd, but we really do just need some quiet time this year. It's been a challenging few months." "Challenging how? Dad, please just tell me what's going on. Nothing that you need to worry about." His tone was firm, closing the door on further questioning. "We'll see you at Christmas and everything will be back to normal then. Promise." After hanging up, I felt even more unsettled. The conversation had offered no clarity, only more questions. The parents who had always been open books were suddenly filled with secrets, and I couldn't understand why. That evening, I met my best friend Jessica for drinks at our favorite bar. The moment she saw my face, her smile faded. "Whoa. Who died?" "No one," I said, sliding onto the bar stool beside her. "But my parents just uninvited me from Thanksgiving without any real explanation." As I recounted the strange conversations, Jessica's expression grew increasingly concerned. "That doesn't sound like Susan and Tom at all," she agreed, stirring her martini thoughtfully. "Do you think they're having marriage problems?" "My parents? They're like the poster couple for marriage success. They still hold hands when they walk. Even the strongest marriages hit rough patches. Maybe they're trying to work through something and don't want an audience." The thought had crossed my mind, but it felt wrong. My parents had weathered significant challenges throughout their 30-year marriage, career setbacks, my grandmother's long illness, even a house fire that had displaced them for months. Through it all, they'd always maintained that family support was their greatest strength. Or maybe, Jessica continued when I didn't respond, one of them has health issues they're not ready to discuss. That possibility sent a chill through me. You think they'd hide something like that? My mom didn't tell us about her hysterectomy until 2 weeks after the fact. She said she didn't want us to worry. Jessica shrugged. Parents get weird about their mortality. The conversation with Jessica left me with new anxieties. Over the next few days, I made several more attempts to probe deeper, calling my parents with transparent excuses about needing recipes or gift suggestions. Each time they maintained their position. They were fine, nothing was wrong. They just needed some time alone this Thanksgiving. My mother, usually eager to talk at length, now seemed to find reasons to cut our conversations short. My father, typically willing to indulge my concerns, had become a wall of reassurance without substance. Their coordinated effort to keep me at arm's length only intensified my worry. At work, my distraction became noticeable. During a client presentation, I forgot key details about a campaign I'd been leading for months. My boss Diane pulled me aside afterward. "What's going on, Haley? This isn't like you." I gave her a sanitized version of the situation, expecting a practical, business-minded response. Instead, her eyes softened with understanding. When my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer, he told everyone he was going on a fishing trip to avoid the family Thanksgiving. He didn't want to ruin the holiday with his news. She patted my arm. "I'm not saying that's what's happening with your parents, but sometimes people pull away when they're facing something difficult." Her words echoed in my mind as I returned to my desk. The possibility that my parents were facing a serious problem alone, believing they were somehow protecting me through their silence, was unbearable. We'd always faced challenges as a family. The thought that they might be suffering in isolation, believing it was the right thing to do, broke my heart in ways their uninvitation hadn't. As Thanksgiving drew closer, my anxiety morphed into something deeper and more persistent. Each morning, I'd wake up with a heaviness in my chest, wondering what my parents weren't telling me. Each night, I'd fall asleep mid-worry, my dreams filled with scenarios ranging from divorce to terminal illness. The situation became harder to ignore as social media filled with friends' holiday preparations. Amanda posting about the heritage turkey she'd ordered, Michael sharing his grandmother's secret cranberry recipe, Taylor documenting her cross-country flight home with excited captions about family reunions. Each post was an unwelcome reminder of what I was missing. Not just the celebration itself, but the certainty that I belonged somewhere on Thanksgiving. 12 days before the holiday, my brother Kyle called. His timing as always was impeccable. "Hey sis, quick question. What time are mom and dad expecting us on Thanksgiving? Amber's trying to plan the twins' nap schedule for the flight." My heart sank. "You haven't talked to mom and dad recently?" "Not since last week." "Why?" I hesitated, not wanting to be the bearer of bad news. "Kyle, they asked me not to come for Thanksgiving this year. Said they needed space." The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. "That makes no sense," he finally said. "Mom's been planning this dinner since August. She even asked me to ship those special peppers she can't get locally for her cornbread." "When did she ask you about the peppers?" "About 3 weeks ago." The timeline made no sense. 3 weeks ago would have been right before they'd texted me to stay away. What had changed in those few days? "Have they contacted you about canceling?" I asked. "No, but now I'm worried. Let me call them and get back to you." 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Well, that was weird," Kyle said without preamble. "They gave me the same line about needing space and suggested we do our own thing in California this year." That sounded strange, almost rehearsed. The knowledge that I wasn't the only one being shut out should have been comforting. Instead, it amplified my concern. Our parents were systematically canceling Thanksgiving with both their children. Something was definitely wrong. "What do you think is happening?" I asked. "I don't know, but I don't like it. Mom's never missed a chance to see the twins. She wouldn't cancel unless something serious was going on." Jessica suggested they might be having marriage problems. Kyle's laugh held no humor. "Those two? No way. They're disgustingly in love even after all these years." "Then what? Health issues they don't want to worry us about." "Maybe." His tone grew serious. Dad did mention that Mom had a doctor's appointment last month, but he changed the subject quickly when I asked about it. That detail sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. A doctor's appointment for what? He didn't say. I assumed it was routine. But routine medical checkups don't lead to canceling family holidays. They don't create the kind of tension I'd heard in my parents' voices. They don't prompt loving, communicative parents to suddenly establish unprecedented boundaries. After talking with Kyle, my concern shifted from hurt feelings to genuine fear. That night, unable to concentrate on anything else, I made an impulsive decision. I would drive to Connecticut the next day, not to confront my parents, but just to see with my own eyes that they were okay. I could make up an excuse about being in the area for work. They wouldn't have to know that my real purpose was surveillance. The following afternoon, I parked my car a block away from my parents' colonial-style home, feeling simultaneously ridiculous and justified. The house looked the same as always, well-maintained, with my mother's fall decorations still adorning the porch. What had I expected? Visible signs of crisis? As I debated whether to approach the front door or drive away with my dignity intact, a car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. A woman in her 60s emerged, carrying what looked like a casserole dish. She rang the doorbell, and moments later my father appeared. They spoke briefly before he accepted the dish and the woman departed. The interaction seemed ordinary enough, but something about my father's posture, the slight slope of his shoulders, the way he glanced up and down the street before closing the door, struck me as uncharacteristically wary. People bringing food to the house. My father looking exhausted. My mother missing from the brief exchange. Each detail added to the growing certainty that something was wrong. Still, I couldn't bring myself to march up to the door and demand answers. If they'd wanted me to know what was happening, they would have told me. Their privacy, even if it hurt me, deserved respect. I drove back to Boston with my mind racing. That night, I dreamed my childhood home was filled with water, rising slowly around my parents while they insisted everything was fine. I woke at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, unable to shake the image of them smiling reassuringly as the water reached their necks. The next day, Jessica called to invite me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner. "My mom insists," she said. "She says no one should be alone on Thanksgiving, especially not you. She's always had a soft spot for you since we were roommates." The invitation brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "That's really sweet of her. But I don't want to intrude on your family time." "Don't be ridiculous. You're practically family anyway. My brothers still ask about you, especially Tyler." Her attempt at lightness fell flat as I pictured myself sitting at the Hartman's table, trying to smile and make conversation while wondering what was happening at my parents' house. Would they be sitting down to a meal together, relieved at the quiet? Or would there be doctors' treatments, difficult conversations happening in the space where our family celebration should have been? "I'll think about it," I promised, knowing that wherever I ended up on Thanksgiving Day, my heart would be in Connecticut with the parents who had, for whatever reason, decided to face their unknown challenge without me. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when my phone rang. The name on the screen, Barbara Holden, took me a moment to place. Barbara was my mother's closest friend, a retired librarian who'd been a fixture at our family gatherings for years. "Haley, dear," her familiar voice greeted me. "I hope I'm not disturbing you at work." "Not at all, Barbara. It's good to hear from you." Despite my casual response, alarm bells were already ringing in my head. Barbara rarely called me directly. "I wanted to check if you're planning to come down early for Thanksgiving. Your mother mentioned you might not make it this year, but I thought she must have misunderstood." The confusion in her voice mirrored my own ongoing bewilderment. "Actually, my parents asked me not to come this year. They said they needed space." Barbara's sharp intake of breath was audible. "Space? With Susan in the hospital? That doesn't sound right at all." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Hospital? What are you talking about?" A long pause followed. Then Barbara's horrified whisper. "Oh dear. You don't know, do you? I've put my foot in it completely." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Barbara, please. What's happening with my mom? I shouldn't be the one to tell you this. Your father specifically." "Barbara." My voice cracked. "Please." She sighed heavily. "Your mother was diagnosed with breast cancer 6 weeks ago, dear. She's having surgery today to remove the tumor." "Thought I assumed you knew and were coming to be with them." The ground seemed to drop from beneath me. "Cancer. Surgery. Today. And they hadn't told me." "I have to go," I managed to say, ending the call before Barbara could respond. Within 15 minutes, I had cleared my absence with my boss, thrown some clothes into an overnight bag, and was in my car heading south on I-95. The 3-hour drive passed in a blur of tears and anger, my mind spinning with questions. How could they keep this from me? From Kyle? What kind of cancer was it? How serious? Why would they face this alone rather than let their children support them? By the time I reached Hartford Hospital, my initial shock had hardened into determination. I found the surgical waiting area and spotted my father immediately, hunched in a corner chair, staring at nothing. He looked like he'd aged years since I'd last seen him. His face drawn, dark circles under his eyes, his usually impeccable button-down wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. Dad! His head snapped up, eyes widening in shock. Haley, what are you? Barbara called me. She thought I knew. I dropped into the chair beside him. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me be here for you both? His face crumpled. The strong father I'd known all my life suddenly vulnerable in ways I'd never seen. We were going to tell you after we knew more. After the surgery and when we had a treatment plan. His voice was hoarse. Your mother didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving with this news. Ruin Thanksgiving? I repeated incredulously. Dad, this is our family. Mom has cancer. How could you think I wouldn't want to know immediately? It was your mother's decision, he said, rubbing his face wearily. She was diagnosed right after her routine mammogram. Stage 2A. The doctors are optimistic. They think they caught it early enough, but... He trailed off, staring at his hands. She didn't want you kids to worry until we had more answers. She thought she was protecting you. I thought about all the times my mother had shielded me from pain. Kissing scraped knees, mediating sibling arguments, helping me through my first heartbreak. Always prioritizing my well-being over her own. But this was different. This wasn't protection. It was exclusion from something fundamentally important to our family. How long has she been in surgery? About 2 hours. They said it could take 4. Have you called Kyle? Dad shook his head. Not yet. Your mother wanted to wait. I'm calling him now. I said firmly. He deserves to know, and Mom deserves to have her entire family supporting her. For once, my father didn't argue. He just nodded, looking relieved to have someone else making decisions. Kyle's reaction mirrored my own shock, hurt. Then immediate plans to fly east with his family. We'll be there tomorrow morning. He promised. Tell Mom we love her. 3 more hours passed before a surgeon appeared, looking tired but satisfied. Mrs. Mitchell did very well, she told us. We removed the tumor and some lymph nodes for testing. She's in recovery now. When can we see her? I asked. About 30 minutes. A nurse will come get you. My father sagged with relief. And I realized he'd been carrying this burden alone for weeks. The uncertainty, the fear, the weight of honoring my mother's misguided wish to keep her children in the dark. For the first time since Barbara's call, my anger began to soften. When we were finally allowed into the recovery room, my mother looked small against the white hospital bedding. Her face pale but peaceful under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes fluttered open as we approached, widening in surprise when she saw me. Haley. Her voice was raspy from the anesthesia. How did you? Barbara called me, I said, taking her hand gently, mindful of the 4. She thought I already knew. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, honey. I thought I was doing the right thing. By shutting me out when you needed me most? Despite my best efforts, tears spilled down my cheeks. Mom, how could you think that was the right thing? I didn't want this shadow hanging over the holidays, she whispered. I didn't want you to see me as a patient instead of your mother. I didn't want cancer to become the center of our family. But we're your family, I said, my voice breaking. Your cancer isn't just happening to you. It's happening to all of us. And we deserve the chance to help you through it. My father moved to her other side, taking her hand. She's right, Susan. I told you they should know. My mother looked between us, tears streaming down her face. I was so scared, she admitted. Not just of the cancer but of seeing fear in your eyes. Of becoming someone you had to worry about. I've always been the one taking care of everyone else. The raw vulnerability in her voice stripped away the last of my anger. This was my mother. The strongest woman I knew, terrified not just of her diagnosis but of how it would change her role in our family. In trying to maintain the illusion of normalcy, she'd pushed away the very support system she needed most. Kyle and his family are flying in tomorrow, I told her. We're all going to be here for you, every step of the way. That's what families do. For the first time since entering the room, my mother's face relaxed into a small smile. I've made a terrible mistake, haven't I? Yes, I said honestly. But we'll get through it together. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital early, determined to be there when my mother woke up. The night in a nearby hotel had given me time to process my emotions and research breast cancer treatment options. Armed with knowledge and a newfound sense of purpose, I was ready to take charge of a situation that had spiraled due to misguided good intentions. My father was already in the room, asleep in the recliner beside my mother's bed. He stirred when I entered, looking momentarily disoriented before recognition dawned. "What time is it?" he asked, voice rough with sleep. "Just after 7. How is she?" "Rested better than I expected. The nurses gave her something for pain around midnight." He stretched, wincing as his back cracked. "They're coming to check on her soon. The doctor might release her today if everything looks good." My mother slept on, her face more peaceful than it had been yesterday. In sleep, she looked like herself again. Not the cancer patient with tubes and monitors, but my mom, the woman who'd always been the cornerstone of our family's strength. "Have you eaten anything?" I asked my father, noting the dark circles under his eyes. He shook his head. "Not hungry. Dad, you need to take care of yourself too. Let me sit with Mom. You go get some breakfast." For a moment I thought he might refuse. Then his shoulders slumped in acquiescence. Maybe some coffee would help. After he left, I pulled the chair closer to my mother's bedside and gently took her hand. Her skin felt papery but warm, familiar. How many times had these hands comforted me throughout my life? How many meals had they prepared? How many tears had they wiped away? The thought that she'd been facing fear and uncertainty without allowing me to offer the same comfort in return made my heart ache. When she finally stirred, her eyes focused on me with momentary confusion before clearing. "You're really here," she murmured. "I thought I might have dreamed it." "I'm really here," I confirmed. "And I'm not going anywhere." She squeezed my hand weakly. "I'm sorry, Haley. We should have told you from the beginning." "Yes, you should have. But I understand why you didn't." And I did. Even if I didn't agree with their decision. My mother had always been the family protector, shielding us from pain whenever possible. This had been her instinctive response, however misguided. A nurse entered to check my mother's vitals, offering a professional smile. "Looking good, Mrs. Mitchell. Dr. Reynolds will be by shortly to discuss your discharge." After she left, my mother turned to me with determination in her eyes. "I need to call Kyle. He deserves to hear this from me, not secondhand." "Actually," I said, checking my watch, "Kyle's plane landed about 20 minutes ago. He's on his way here with Amber and the twins." Her eyes widened. "The whole family? But Thanksgiving is happening wherever you are." I finished firmly. "That's what matters." My father returned as we were talking, looking marginally more alert with coffee in hand. The three of us sat together as I outlined what I'd learned about breast cancer treatment overnight. "The hospital has a whole support system for families," I explained. "There's a nutritionist who can help with meal planning during chemo, support groups for patients and caregivers, even therapists who specialize in helping families cope with cancer diagnoses." My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "What?" I asked. "It's just," my father began. "We've been so focused on getting through the surgery that we haven't really thought about what comes next. That's why you need us," I said gently. "This isn't something you should navigate alone." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I was so afraid of being a burden. Mom, you've carried us our entire lives. Let us carry you for a while." The door burst open then, saving us from the emotional moment. Kyle rushed in, looking harried and jet-lagged. with Amber following more slowly with a twin clutching each hand. "Mom!" Kyle moved immediately to her bedside, his face a mixture of relief and concern. "Why didn't you tell us?" My mother's tears spilled over as she reached for him. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I thought I was protecting you all." As the twins climbed carefully onto the foot of the hospital bed, peppering their grandmother with questions about her owies, I slipped into the hallway to speak with her doctor. Dr. Reynolds, a composed woman in her 50s, explained the next steps. Once the pathology results came back from the lymph nodes, they would determine whether chemotherapy, radiation, or both would be necessary. "Your mother has an excellent prognosis," she assured me. "With her overall health and the early detection, we have every reason to be optimistic." "And she can go home today?" "Yes. But she'll need someone with her. No heavy lifting, limited movement of her right arm for a few days." "That won't be a problem. We'll all be there." When I returned to the room, the atmosphere had transformed. The twins were showing my mother drawings they'd made on the plane. Kyle was in deep conversation with my father about medication schedules, and Amber was organizing a notebook with questions for the doctors. The cloud of secrecy that had hung over our family for weeks was dissipating, replaced by purposeful activity and togetherness. A nurse entered with discharge papers, looking surprised at the full room. "Quite the support system you have, Mrs. Mitchell." My mother smiled, her first genuine smile since I'd arrived. "Yes, I do. I just needed to remember that." By mid-afternoon, we had my mother settled at home. The house showed signs of my father's distracted caregiving: mail piled on the counter, dishes in the sink, laundry unfolded in baskets. Without discussion, we all fell into roles. Kyle handling the heavier tasks, Amber organizing medications, the twins helping by drawing get-well cards, and me coordinating with the hospital about follow-up appointments. As I passed the dining room, I noticed the table was bare. No festive tablecloth, no centerpiece, none of the traditional decorations that usually appeared weeks before Thanksgiving. On impulse, I dug through the hall closet until I found the box labeled Thanksgiving Decor, in my mother's neat handwriting. "What are you doing?" my father asked, finding me arranging the ceramic turkey salt and pepper shakers on the sideboard. "Tomorrow is still Thanksgiving," I said simply, "and we're all going to be together. That's worth celebrating. Especially now." His eyes glistened as he nodded. "Your mother will like that." That evening, after my mother was comfortably settled in her bedroom with Kyle's family keeping her company, I cornered my father in the kitchen. "You haven't been taking care of yourself at all, have you?" I asked, noting the weight he'd lost, the disorganized state of their usually immaculate home. He sighed, leaning against the counter. "I've been focused on your mother, at the expense of your own health." "Dad, you look exhausted." "I am exhausted," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "I've been so scared, Haley. The thought of losing her." For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. Not the misty eyes at my graduation or Kyle's wedding, but real tears, his shoulders shaking with the force of emotions he'd been suppressing for weeks. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the roles between us shift in a fundamental way. He'd always been my protector. Now we would protect each other. "You're not doing this alone anymore," I promised. "We're in this together. All of us." Later, as I made up the couch for myself, Kyle and his family taking the guest rooms, I overheard my parents talking in their bedroom. "They didn't hesitate," my mother was saying, her voice wondering. "Not for a second. They just dropped everything and came." "Of course they did," my father replied. "They're our children. They love you as much as I do. We should have told them from the beginning." "Yes," he agreed. "That was our mistake. But they're here now, and that's what matters." In that moment, listening to their voices, my mother still weak but determined, my father steadier now that the burden was shared, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, our family would face them together, stronger for having confronted this first hurdle. The mistaken attempt to protect each other by creating distance had only proven how essential our connection truly was. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold, sunlight streaming through the windows of my childhood home. I woke early, my back stiff from the couch but my mind clearer than it had been in weeks. In the kitchen, I found Kyle already making coffee, the twins coloring quietly at the table. "Happy Thanksgiving," he said, handing me a steaming mug. "Mom's awake. She's feeling pretty good. All things considered. Good enough for a modified Thanksgiving dinner?" I asked, sipping the strong coffee gratefully. "Absolutely. Though we might need to adjust the menu." I checked the fridge. Dad hasn't exactly been keeping up with the grocery shopping. By silent mutual agreement, we divided responsibilities. Kyle would take the twins to the grocery store for essential ingredients. I would start preparing the house. Amber would help my mother with a shower and fresh clothes, a task that required careful navigation around the surgical drains and bandages. My father emerged from the bedroom looking more rested than he had yesterday. "I checked the freezer," he announced. "There's a turkey breast your mother bought last month before." He trailed off, then rallied. "It should be enough for the 6 of us." "Perfect," I said, already mentally adjusting our traditional menu. "A full turkey would be too much work today. Let's keep it simple this year." Throughout the morning, the house came alive with purposeful activity. Kyle returned with groceries and a triumphant expression. Found sweet potatoes, cranberries, and the last can of pumpkin in the store. Thanksgiving is saved. Amber helped my mother to the living room, settling her in her favorite armchair with pillows for support. Though pale and moving carefully, my mother was clearly determined to participate in the day. "I should be helping," she protested as I arranged a throw blanket over her legs. "Not this year," I said firmly. "This year, you're the guest of honor." While Kyle managed the twins' energy by enlisting them to make place cards, I tackled the turkey breast, seasoning it as I'd watched my father do dozens of times. It wouldn't be the same as his masterpiece, but it would be cooked with love. In the midst of preparations, the doorbell rang. My father answered to find Barbara Holden holding a large glass dish. "Green bean casserole," she announced, stepping inside. "I didn't know if you'd be up to cooking." Her eyes widened at the sight of all of us. "Well, the whole family's here after all." My mother smiled from her chair. "Thanks to you, Barbara. You knocked down the first domino." Barbara looked momentarily abashed. "I still feel terrible about breaking your confidence, Susan." "Don't," my mother said firmly. "It was the wake-up call we needed. I was wrong to try to keep this from my children." As Barbara joined our makeshift celebration, other neighbors began appearing, each bearing dishes: cranberry sauce, dinner rolls, a sweet potato casserole. Word had spread through the community grapevine about my mother's surgery, and in typical small-town fashion, the response was food and company. By mid-afternoon, our dining table was laden with a mismatched but abundant Thanksgiving feast. None of it was perfect. The turkey was slightly overdone, the stuffing came from a box, and the gravy had mysterious lumps, but as we gathered around the table, these details seemed insignificant. My father, taking his usual place at the head of the table, looked around at all of us with shining eyes. "Before we eat, I want to say something." He cleared his throat. "This Thanksgiving didn't turn out the way any of us planned. But looking at all of you here, supporting us, loving us despite our misguided attempt to handle this alone, I've never been more grateful." My mother, seated beside him with a soft pillow at her back, reached for his hand. "We made a mistake," she said, addressing all of us. "We thought we were protecting you by not sharing our burden. But family doesn't work that way, does it? Family means sharing everything, the good and the hard." Kyle raised his glass. "To Mom, the strongest person I know. And to no more secrets in this family." "No more secrets," we all echoed, even the twins, though they clearly didn't understand the significance. As we began passing dishes, my mother said, "I want everyone to know what happens next. The doctor thinks I'll need chemotherapy starting in 2 weeks. It will be every 3 weeks for about 4 months." The straightforward way she shared this information, so different from the secrecy of recent weeks, felt like a new beginning. "I'll come down for your first treatment," I said immediately. "And I'll coordinate with Haley so one of us is here for each session," Kyle added. "We can set up a calendar." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You both have your own lives. I can't ask." "You're not asking," I interrupted gently. "We're offering. That's how family works, remember? Throughout the meal, we discussed practical matters, how my father would need support too, how we'd coordinate care from different cities, how to keep the twins connected to their grandmother during this challenging time. The conversation was occasionally punctuated by difficult emotions, but there was also laughter, especially when the twins shared their unique 4-year-old perspective on hospitals, where the doctors fix Grammy's owies. As we finished our pumpkin pie, store-bought but delicious nonetheless, my mother looked around the table with a serene expression I hadn't seen since before this ordeal began. "This isn't the Thanksgiving I planned," she said, "but it might be the most meaningful one we've ever had." In that moment, surrounded by family, neighbors, and imperfect food made with perfect love, I knew she was right. This Thanksgiving had stripped away pretense and reminded us of what truly mattered. Not the perfect meal or the flawless traditions, but the willingness to support each other through life's most challenging moments. The cancer diagnosis that had nearly driven us apart had ultimately brought us closer together than ever before. 3 months after that unexpected Thanksgiving, I stood in my parents' kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner while my mother supervised from a stool at the counter. Her hair was completely gone now, a colorful scarf wrapped artfully around her head, but her eyes were bright and her color good. 2 rounds of chemotherapy had left her tired but determined, her prognosis continuing to improve with each treatment. "You don't have to hover over the carrots," she teased. "They're going in a stew, not on display." I grinned, deliberately slowing my chopping to annoy her. "You know, some patients actually follow their doctor's advice about taking it easy." "I am taking it easy. I'm sitting, aren't I?" The easy banter between us felt precious after the fear and uncertainty of recent months. Every Friday, I made the drive from Boston to Connecticut, working remotely from my parents' home, so I could accompany my mother to her treatments and help around the house. Kyle and his family had visited twice since Thanksgiving, and we had established a weekly Sunday video call that had quickly become sacred family time. My father entered the kitchen, hanging up his phone. That was Kyle. "The twins want to show off their new superhero capes on the call this weekend." He moved behind my mother, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "How are you feeling, love?" "Better every day," she said, reaching up to pat his hand. "Especially with our personal chef here." She winked at me. The changes in our family dynamic over the past 3 months had been profound. My father had finally learned to accept help, allowing friends to drive my mother to appointments when I couldn't be there. My mother had discovered that vulnerability didn't diminish her strength, but rather revealed new dimensions of it. And I had found a deeper appreciation for the precious, unpredictable nature of time with loved ones. After dinner, as we settled in the living room with cups of herbal tea, my mother's concession to her treatment regimen, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. "The doctor said your last scans looked really good." My mother nodded. "The tumor markers are down significantly. Dr. Reynolds is very pleased." "She used the word remission yesterday," my father added, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes betraying his hope. "That's fantastic," I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Though the regular checkups would continue for years, this milestone felt significant. "We should celebrate." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," my mother cautioned, ever practical. "There's still one more treatment to go." "Mom," I said gently, "it's okay to celebrate good news when it comes. Remember what Dr. Phillips said in the support group? Acknowledging progress is part of healing." She smiled ruefully, using my own support group leader's words against me. Well played. The cancer support group had been my mother's concession to her children's insistence that she needed more than just medical treatment. Initially reluctant, she'd found unexpected comfort in connecting with others on similar journeys. It had been there, among strangers who understood her fears, that she'd finally allowed herself to be vulnerable in ways she'd initially tried to hide from her own family. "Speaking of celebrations," my father said, "we need to start thinking about Thanksgiving this year." The significance of his words wasn't lost on any of us. Last Thanksgiving had marked the beginning of our family's most challenging chapter. This year would be different. A true celebration of recovery and renewed connection. "I want to do it properly this time," my mother declared. "All the trimmings, the whole family, no secrets, no hospital visits." Are you sure you'll be up for it? I asked. That's a lot of work. And you'll have just finished treatment. Then we'll all help, my father said firmly. We can start planning now, divide up the cooking. Kyle and Amber can bring dishes from California. The important thing is that we're together. As we discussed menu possibilities and sleeping arrangements, I marveled at how different this planning felt from the tension-filled weeks before last Thanksgiving. The cancer was still present in our lives, but it no longer held the power to isolate us from each other. Instead, it had taught us the invaluable lesson that true family strength comes not from protecting each other from hard truths, but from facing those truths together. Later that evening, after my parents had gone to bed, I sat on the back porch swing, thinking about the journey of the past months. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. How's your mom doing today? I smiled as I typed back. Better. We're actually planning Thanksgiving already. Her response came quickly. That's a good sign. Planning for the future means she believes in it. Jessica's words crystallized something I'd been feeling but hadn't articulated. Throughout my mother's treatment, her willingness to make plans, whether for holiday meals or garden projects for the spring, had been a form of quiet defiance against the uncertainty of cancer. Each time she discussed the future, she was declaring her intention to be present for it. The spring air carried the scent of my mother's beloved garden, where daffodils were already pushing through the soil. New growth, new beginnings. I thought about how close we had come to experiencing her cancer journey from a distance, separated by well-intentioned but misguided boundaries. How different these months would have been if Barbara hadn't accidentally revealed the truth. The lesson seemed clear now. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is ignore someone's request for space when our intuition tells us something is wrong. My parents had thought they were sparing Kyle and me from worry, but in reality, they had nearly deprived us all of the profound connection that comes from supporting each other through life's darkest moments. As spring turned to summer, my mother completed her final treatment. Her hair began to return, a soft silver fuzz that she touched wonderingly each morning. By fall, her strength had largely returned, though she tired more easily than before. The regular checkups continued, each clean scan a quiet victory we celebrated together. When Thanksgiving finally arrived, almost exactly 1 year after my mother's diagnosis, our family gathered around the same dining table with profoundly different perspectives. The meal was magnificent. We had all contributed dishes, honoring traditions while creating new ones. The turkey, a full 20-pounder this year, was perfectly cooked, the stuffing made from my grandmother's recipe, the pies a collaborative effort between Kyle and me. Before we ate, my mother stood, looking around at all of us, her husband of 35 years, her children, her grandchildren, even Barbara, who had once again been invited to join our family celebration. Last year at this time, I thought I was protecting you all by keeping my diagnosis to myself, she said, her voice steady. I believed that love meant shielding you from pain. What I've learned since then is that true love is allowing people to support you through the hardest times. It's trusting them with your vulnerability. It's believing that together, we're stronger than any challenge life throws our way. She raised her glass, her eyes bright with unshed tears. To family, not just the easy, picture-perfect moments, but the messy, frightening, real ones too. Because that's where love proves itself most powerfully. As we echoed her toast, I knew that the journey wasn't over. Cancer had left its mark on our family, a shadow that would never completely disappear from routine checkups and momentary fears. But it had also given us an unexpected gift, the knowledge that when faced with the most frightening circumstances, our family bond hadn't broken but strengthened. Sometimes the most significant lessons come from our greatest mistakes. My parents' well-intentioned decision to exclude their children from their crisis had ultimately revealed how essential that inclusion was. In trying to protect us from pain, they had nearly denied us all the profound connection that comes from facing life's challenges together. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone tried to protect you by keeping you in the dark? Or have you ever hidden your own struggles from loved ones, thinking you were sparing them? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes our greatest mistakes teach us our most valuable lessons about what family truly means. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. And remember, in your own family's difficult moments, Letting others in might be the bravest and most loving choice you can make. Thank you for listening to my story today. Whether you're celebrating with family, chosen family, or taking some well-deserved time for yourself this holiday season, I hope you carry with you the knowledge that true connection often happens not in our perfect moments, but in our most vulnerable ones.